If not, we will proceed to SCR 76 and SR 45, requesting Congress to convene a limited national convention under Article 5 for the exclusive purpose of proposing an amendment to the United States Constitution that would limit the influence of money in our electoral process. So we have the Attorney General's office.
Good morning. Chair Taniguchi, Vice Chair Rhodes, Senators. I'm Deirdre Marie Iha, Deputy Attorney General. The Department of the Attorney General opposes this resolution. This resolution is potentially of great legal significance and operates in a very uncertain area of law. The resolution would be Hawaii's application for a federal constitutional convention under Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution. We testify to provide some background information about the risk involved with the resolution. A federal constitutional convention has never been held in more than 200 years. Consequently, there is much that we do not know about how such a convention would operate. We don't know the rules that would govern it. We don't know how the states would be represented. We don't know how those representatives would be chosen. And perhaps most significantly, we don't know whether it can be effectively limited to one topic. This resolution says that it's intended to limit it to one topic, but I cannot tell you whether such a thing would actually work. That's the risk that informs our position. There's more details provided in our testimony. I'd be happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thank you. League of Women Voters.
Chairs, thanks for allowing me to present our testimony. I'm Doug Miller. The League of Women Voters opposes these resolutions. You have our written testimony, but I'd like to briefly, orally, summarize some of our major concerns. Just as with the Hawaii Constitutional Convention, if there were a national constitutional convention, you can't tie the convention's hands. Everything is up for grabs. Any part of our Constitution could be rewritten by a Constitutional Convention. They could tie different proposals together so it's vote the whole thing up or vote the whole thing down. You wouldn't necessarily have a right, or a state wouldn't necessarily have a right to make decisions on particular proposals. There's an excellent chance that huge amounts of money would be applied to affect who gets appointed to the Constitutional Convention. And at a time where we're very polarized and a lot of money is applied to influence decisions, this is not the way to go. It's an unprecedented risk. Everything could be torn apart. Let me give you a couple of easy illustrations. I think if you asked the public, a majority of them don't believe in Keynesian economics. There's a proposal out there. There are states which are trying to call a constitutional convention to have a balanced budget amendment to require that the federal government never, ever spend more money than it takes in. Well, for most of this country's history, we've been spending more money than we take in, and sometimes very successfully. It's a way of dealing with depressions, economic depressions. But half the country doesn't believe these things work. And you could easily get a constitutional convention that put a balanced budget amendment through. Everything would be up for grabs. There's nothing that couldn't happen. Even our basic Bill of Rights might be under assault. Don't take a chance. Don't put your foot into the trap. Thank you.
Thank you. Common Cause Hawaii.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Corey Tanita for Common Cause Hawaii, and we stand in strong opposition to SCR 76 and SR 45. And to be very clear, we do agree that we need to address the money in politics issue. We agree that Citizens United is a terrible decision that needs to be overturned, but we do not agree that an Article 5 convention is the best path forward. And for many of the reasons that the Attorney General already stated and the League of Women Voters, bottom line is that there is no process, there's no rules, there's nothing as to how a convention would be run, and everything would be potentially up for grabs. And I know that really the only legal consensus is that there is no consensus as to how it would run. I mean, this debate has been going on for decades and decades, right? I don't think we're going to solve it here today either. So, but I would just note, we do have concerns, most particularly that there's no language that it can limit a convention to a single topic. And for the reasons that people already enumerated, so I'll avoid that. But I do note that proponents for these measures and similar measures in other states have argued that because Congress is not aggregating calls for a convention, that means that it can be limited to a single topic. However, once a convention is convened, there's nothing that says the delegates can't expand the scope of the convention. So we have questions that are unanswered about that, and also the ratification process and so forth. But I will try not to repeat it, as we already heard. So I'll just point out that, due to the ambiguity of the convention process, over 230 organizations have signed on to a letter, including several here in Hawaii. And I've attached that letter to our written testimony for your convenience, opposing calls for any Article 5 constitutional convention. So we ask you to defer this matter, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Mateo Caballero, ACLU.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair. Mateo Caballero, Legal Director of the ACLU of Hawaii, in strong opposition of this measure. As prior testimony has said, there are essentially two methods of amending the U.S. Constitution. One is through, 2/3 of both houses of Congress. That is the method that has been used so far. But this method of calling for a convention hasn't been used in over 200 years, and it has a lot of uncertainties that have already been explored. I just want to touch on one quickly, which is the ratification process, which is because you're calling for a new convention. In theory, the convention could, adopt their own ratification rules, which is in fact what happened 200 years ago, where they changed the threshold for, voting on the new constitution. And this could result in, and I think the term Pandora's box is the appropriate one. It could result on drastic changes to our democratic and federal system of government, or even our most basic civil liberties and civil rights. And so, that's the reason we oppose it. I'll close by just reading a few quotes, which were not included in my testimony, by former justices about what, their views on the convention. This is Warren Burger, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court for 17 years between 1969 and 1986, and he said, "There is no way to effectively limit or muzzle the actions of a constitutional convention. The convention could make its own rules and set its own agenda. Congress might try to limit the convention to one amendment or one issue, but there is no way to assure that the convention would obey." And that's on one end. Justice Scalia more recently said, "I certainly wouldn't want a constitutional convention. Wow, who knows what would come out of it?" So it's really Pandora's box. Anything could be proposed, and who knows what would happen if one convention is called. So we would oppose it. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole Wu, Hawaii Appleseed Center for Law, also in opposition. Randall Imada, in support.
Hello, my name is Randall Imada. I am a former nurse aide and current caretaker of my elderly parents in Paoa Valley. I've lived my entire life right here in Oahu. I went to Roosevelt High School in Honolulu. My favorite store to buy groceries from is Times Supermarket. However, when I am there, I often wonder how the people who shop there can survive. Rent, electricity, gas, food, medical insurance, and education are so expensive in Hawaii. I would like to see a Hawaii that has equal opportunity for all. I believe that the Free and Fair Elections Resolution is the first step to achieving that goal. Please support SCR 76. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Lum.
Aloha. My name is Jennifer Lum. I'm a mom of 2 young adult sons, and today I'm here for them. I've worked for the state of Hawaii and the federal government for over 28 years, first as an Air Force Reserve Master Sergeant, and now I'm currently a special education high school teacher at Pearl City High School. I've lived in Hawaii for almost 30 years. I feel that it is my duty as a citizen to speak for those whom I serve, my students. I love working with the future. My students are funny, creative, and going to be our leaders one day. I love using my leadership skills that I acquired through the Air Force in helping my school go in a new positive, modern direction. And my greatest ambition is to better the future for my students and my sons. But money in politics is destroying that future. If there is a silver lining to this, though, is that we, the people, are waking up. Nearly 9 out of 10 Americans believe reducing corruption in federal government is a top priority. From conservative Republicans to progressive Democrats, Americans agree on the need to restore free and fair elections. This is not an issue of left versus right. It is an issue of right versus wrong. On this vital American issue, it is time for Hawaii to lead, using the powers built into the Constitution for this very purpose. If Congress itself is the source of the problem, then it is our duty and responsibility as the states to take action to fix it. Please take the lead in voting yes on SCR 76 to help Hawaii become the 6th state in the Union to truly join the fight in restoring democracy. Mahalo for your time.
Thank you. Janelle Hugh, in opposition. Corey Hardin, with comments. Daniel Bishop, in opposition. Alan Burdick.
Thank you, Chair Taniguchi, Vice Chair Rhodes, other members of the committee. I'm Alan Burdick. I wear multiple hats, and I can't use any of my organizational affiliations because many of the people in the organizations that I am affiliated with are on the other side. So I have submitted testimony in my individual capacity. One friend urges me to say that I am an attorney. Well, happily retired. But I am in strong opposition to this, not because of any frustration or annoyance with the Citizens United decision, which I consider an absolute outrage. As I pointed out in my written testimony, this decision was judicial legislation that hijacked an ordinary case and caused it to legislate and decide matters that were not before the court, and in which the right-wing majority of the Supreme Court decided matters that really weren't before the court, and allowed basically corporations to get privileges that are not there in the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment begins with the words, persons born. Corporations are not born, as we know, except in the eyes of a right-wing majority in the Supreme Court. I am concerned not as a matter of purity. I am deeply concerned that any constitutional convention will go off the rails. I see huge risk, first of all, that even in the ideal circumstances of a constitutional convention coming up with a beautiful proposed amendment, it'll never pass. It'll never be ratified by 38 state legislatures. You won't get them. There's no chance of that. Conversely, there is a huge risk that, as the Attorney General's Department has indicated and League of Women Voters and as others have stated, there is a absolutely huge risk that the Constitutional Convention will, one way or another, start drafting and promulgating proposed amendments to the Constitution on multiple proposals that go down the long right-wing wish list of balanced budget amendments, anti-abortion amendments, right to work, you name it. And we will be fighting those proposed amendments for years and years and years. we can hear that the Koch brothers are not interested in this amendment. In a con right now. But they will come out of the woodwork as soon as there is a con coming up. They will use Citizens United to finance candidates for that con, and you will hear, and Congress will vote on legislation to broaden the scope of that con to make sure that far more issues will be decided in that con besides Citizens United. And this will be a horror story that we who do not like Citizens United will be fighting for the rest of our lives. For this reason, I join in those who have spoken against it. This is the worst danger I can envisage. I hope you will. And I respectfully, I worked for Senator Rhodes 2 years ago in the House Judiciary Committee. I have the greatest admiration for him, but I think this is the wrong way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. Elton Johnson, also in opposition.
Chair Taniguchi, Vice Chair, and committee members, I'm very concerned primarily about by the way, I'm on the board of Common Cause, but I'm testifying as an individual on this. I'm a bit of a free thinker, and I like to review the law and the resolutions. And so I'm not testifying on behalf of Common Cause. However, I'm deeply concerned about the risk involved in this approach to an issue with which I and Common Cause and many other organizations who are opposed to this favor. We favor addressing the money and politics issue, and we just think this is an unnecessarily and extremely risky approach. And I understand the impatience, and I totally get it, and I respect the people who are on the other side of this issue in their appreciation for the need to get money less involved in our politics. I'll try to be quick. I think the main concern that I have is that, when we're here on our beautiful blue island in the blue Pacific, we may not always consider carefully when we bring national resolutions and applications to tweak the Constitution. We may not quite appreciate the full United States picture. With all due respect, right now we've got 33 state legislatures in control of one major party, and it's not the one in majority here. And that's 2-1. We have two approaches at ratification stage on this type of Article 5 amendment. And one is through the ledge of the state, the other is through convention in the state. You can bet that the convention approach would be the one that a lot of the purple states would select, trying to get to that 38 vote ratification threshold. This is the first money and politics era ratification being considered. We need to keep in mind that we have a lot of radical right groups who have been scheming for just such a national convention with, as others testifying have pointed out, other agendas in mind. And I think I should probably get out of the way with that, but I just pray that we keep in mind the context nationally. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Eric Schrager.
Morning, Chair Taniguchi.
Morning.
Vice Chair Rhodes, members of the committee. Thank you very much for having the hearing. I'm speaking in support of SCR 76. I'm a retired naval officer. I live in Eva Beach with my wife and 3 kids. I remember back in '85 when I landed here in a P-3 over at Naval Air Station Barbers Point. I got off the plane and I said to myself, wow, this is a place I want to come back to. And luckily I did. I fell in love with Hawaii. And now I live just a couple miles from that spot where I landed, out in Eva Beach. And I'm raising my family right here in our beautiful islands. I've been here for 11 years now. And, since that time, I've become more and more aware of how dysfunctional our political system has become. Name almost any of our country's biggest problems, and they are all exacerbated by the influence of big money from special interest groups and large corporations on our politicians. This issue is an existential threat to our country that must be addressed immediately, and the only solution strong enough and durable enough is to address this problem is a constitutional amendment. We must learn from our own history. Most amendments to the U.S. Constitution have included an Article 5 convention campaign. 4 of the last 11 amendments and the Bill of Rights comprise this number. That's 14. The majority of our current amendments actually included this, all right? This is not something that's unusual. The 17th Amendment, it got within 2 states of compelling Congress to do this, and then Congress finally did. They capitulated, and they passed the 17th Amendment, which got us the right to actually elect our senators as opposed to having them be selected by the governors of the states. I think that's an excellent example of this process being used to compel Congress to act. To compel them to act, and particularly the 17th Amendment, I think is germane, because this was a process that was obviously not very democratic. These senators, they were selected. They were not elected. And it took a lot. It took a lot of states. It took a lot of work. The people used this process. The states used this process, and we compelled Congress to act, and we got the 17th Amendment. Historically, if you need an amendment, this process is included in that process. This is how you do it. We must not be paralyzed in fear, but instead we have to lead with makoa, with courage. Americans have done a lot braver things than hold a national conversation, which is all this convention would be, a conversation. Conversation considering one of the biggest problems in our country right now. This conversation would propose ideas. If those ideas are popular enough to win the approval of 38 states, this process would save our representative democracy for future generations. 5 states have signed on to this resolution already, and Hawaii should definitely be the 6th. This is not a left or right issue. I ask this committee very humbly to join the growing coalition of states that are taking this stand. Please pass this resolution and allow Congress to start working more for us instead of for them. Mahalo.
Thank you. Stacey Schrager. Thank you, Chair.
Hello, Chair Taniguchi and co-chair and members of the Senate. My name is Stacey Schrager. I'm here today in support of SCR 76. My husband and I, we've made Hawaii our permanent home. We care very much about our community and are happy to be raising our children in what we consider the best state in the country. The corrupting influence of money in American politics is staggering. We must do everything in our power to fix it. On April 28th in 2010, Hawaii became the first state to pass a resolution asking Congress to propose an amendment to reverse Citizens United. It took this state only 4 months to react to that disastrous court case. However, in the past 8 years, despite being asked by a further 18 states through joint resolutions, Congress has proven themselves incapable of taking action, failing even to pass the Disclose Act with a Democratic president and majorities in both houses of Congress. They didn't do a single thing to address campaign finance reform. Nothing. They've ignored us. This is no longer acceptable. History shows us that when the American people use every tool they have available to them, including calls for a limited convention under Article 5, change finally comes from an unresponsive Congress. It is our responsibility as citizens and as patriots to fix this problem. In the long run, and I, for one, refuse to let my children deal with the consequences of not fixing this problem. So now Hawaii must lead again, and I have faith in our distinguished senators and representatives that you will do the right thing on behalf of us, the citizens. Please don't keep kicking the can down the road for somebody else to do something, because they're not going to. Take action today. Please vote yes on SCR 76. Mahalo.
Thank you. Morgan Bonnet.
Dear Chairman Taniguchi, Vice Chair Rhodes, and committee members, my name is Morgan Bonnet, and I live Oahu in Senate District 25. I'm a senior mechanical engineer at the UH Institute for Astronomy. Design and build astronomical instrumentation for the Mauna Kea and Haleakala telescopes. I'm originally from France, but I am a natural US citizen, and I've lived in Hawaii with my wife for 9 years, who was born and raised here in Oahu. Being raised in France but living here in the US for much of my adult life, I am fascinated with studying and understanding the US Constitution. As you may know, the US Constitution was finalized the same year as the French Revolution, and the concept of separation of powers came from the French lawyer Montesquieu. His work had a powerful influence on the Founding Fathers, especially James Madison. Montesquieu is also notable for securing the word despotism in the political lexicon. And at this point, I believe that the corrupting influence of big money in politics is slowly bringing the US in this direction, in the form of an oligarchy. This isn't the way it's supposed to work. I still believe that most congresswomen and men come into politics with the right intent, to be public servants who can make a difference in people's lives, but often end up caught in a corrupt system of incentives, having to spend far too much of their time raising money. The Article 5 convention process is a vital part of the checks and balances laid out in the US Constitution, and in fact is the only constitutional check we have on an unresponsive Congress. With Congress clearly not listening to us, no matter which party is in power, SCR 76 seems like a logical step for Hawaii to take. This legislation makes me hopeful that we will one day be truly represented like the Founding Fathers intended, so that the people will be able to get more involved and play a bigger role in their democratic republic. I trust you, committee members and good senators of Hawaii, to make the right decision for our country and vote yes on SCR 76. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonet. Vanessa?
Good morning, Chair Taniguchi, Vice Chair Rhodes, and the committee. My name is Vanessa Cass. This is my first time to testify, but I just wanted to be here in person to say that I support the passing of this resolution, and I hope that you guys can listen to the other testimony in support of this and how previous amendments have gone through and what process that has been in regards to the Article 5 limited convention. Thank you.
Thank you. Kehaulani Fanene.
Good morning, Chairman Taniguchi, Vice Chairman Rhodes, and members of the committee. My name is Kehaulani Fanene, and I live in Laie, Hawaii. While my parents met in Laie at BYU, Hawaii, neither of them ended up graduating. Instead, my older sister and I grew up in a single-parent home with our mom in Idaho, while my dad stayed in Hawaii until he passed away when I was 6. There were many struggles growing up in a single-income household, and by the time I graduated high school, I knew there was no chance I would have the opportunity to go to college like all my friends. Instead, I worked dead-end jobs until I became a single mother myself. I did not want my son to endure all the trials I did in my life and knew I needed a good career to support him. By the time he was 9 months old, the two of us had moved to Laie so I could attend the same school my parents did, with a determination to finish what they had not. By the time he was 3 years old, I had graduated with a bachelor's in computer science, and today I'm an application developer for HMSA. My journey was not an easy one, but I know I'm fortunate to have overcome the statistics most single moms face, and I know there are many out there who will be doomed to a life of poverty because of the great wealth inequality that plagues our country. I support SCR 76 because in order to fix this and many other issues that are important to me, we must add an amendment to the U.S. Constitution to eliminate big money in our political system and restore true representative democracy to the people of this country. As a Hawaii citizen, it would make me proud to know Hawaii is a leader in this fight. Please support SCR 76 so that we can move our country forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Monetta.
Sure. Aloha, Chairman Taniguchi, Vice Chairman Rhodes, and committee members. My name is Michael Monetta. I am the National Director of the Wolf-PAC, and I am here in strong support of SCR 76. First of all, I just want to say that I love coming here. It's an amazing culture here. I've been coming here for a few years now, and have gotten to know some of you, and I do love it. But I have to say that I hope that I only come back for vacation now in the future, or maybe to ratify the 28th Amendment, which is really what that would be even better, actually. And that's really what this resolution is about. It's not about a convention. Convention is only a means. It is about getting a 28th Amendment to our Constitution that gives us a free and fair election system. And this resolution, I think the one thing I'll say about it, SCR 76, at its core, what it's really about is taking responsibility. Taking responsibility for a federal government that no longer functions. For the people, anyway. It functions for some people, a very tiny percentage of people. So that's really what, at the end of the day, that's what this is about. And I really hope you'll consider that when making your final decision on this. But I would like to say, with regards to the opposition, I'd just like to address a couple things, and it is addressed in these packets that I just sent out as well. It's nothing personal, first of all. There's lots of good people in opposition to this bill. I'm going to go have coffee with Corey actually later this afternoon, and then a few others to try to hash some of this stuff out. But it's frustrating because we shouldn't be on opposite sides of this. The forces that we're going up against right now are way too strong to be divided on this, especially when the legal research around the convention process is one-sided and conclusive. There actually is no legal debate. You can definitely cherry pick and pick quotes out from scholars here and there, but all of the reports that have been done around it, the thorough reports from the Department of Justice, Congressional Research Service, American Bar Association, what they do is they take both sides of all of these scholars, including Warren Berger and others, and they make conclusions. And all of them, literally all, have concluded that the states do have the power to call them in a convention. That was the founders' intent, etc.
and that there are multiple mechanisms in place for those limitations to be enforced. Now, I'm always asking the opposition to send me more information because we want to stay open-minded about this. We want to make the right decisions. So last night, I'll just tell you a quick story. I was about to fall asleep, and someone sent me the testimony from the Attorney General's office. And there was a report in there that they used for their, actually two reports, that they cited in their testimony that I had not seen either of. So I was like, oh, man, well, I hope that this is the one legal report that goes against what we're trying to tell people. So I read it, just like I've read all of the other reports. And I highly question if anyone at the Attorney General's office has read that report, because it makes our case better than any of the ones we've been using for years now. So I would encourage you to read, just some of the stuff in the packet that I just sent, but I'm going to read you, this is from the conclusion of the report cited from the Attorney General's office, The Other Way to Amend the Constitution, the Article 5 Constitutional Convention Amendment Process by James Kenneth. This is from the conclusion of that report. Much of the fear surrounding a convention is unfounded. The Convention's clause, text, and history indicate that it grants power to the states to limit the scope of any such convention. In addition, the states have the ability to reject any amendments proposed by a convention through the ratification process. That's not me saying it. That's not Wolf-PAC saying it. That is from the report cited by the opposition. And then just one more. This is the other report that was also cited in the opposition. It's from the Rotunda Con Law textbook, also cited. Direct quote from that report. And it says, the fact that there are no certain answers to these questions, just as there are no absolute answers about any event that will take place in the future, hardly means that a constitutional convention will be hit. It will be a hit and miss proposition. However, one resolves these questions, it is important to bear in mind that a constitutional convention cannot, by itself, change the present Constitution. For Article 5 provides that no proposal, either from Congress or from the convention, can become part of the Constitution unless 3/4 of the states ratify it. Thus, Article 5, when it created the amendment process, also created a built-in democratic check. Again, that's not me saying it. That's from the report cited by the opposition. And then, lastly, just a couple more things that I'll leave you with. I won't go into detail, but, we've heard from opposition that we don't know how a convention operates. If you look on page 5 of that packet, there's a really strong paragraph from the Congressional Research Service, again, not from me or from Wolf-PAC, explaining that there are many resources available for a convention if we ever get to that point. And then lastly, we hear sometimes that the 1787 convention was a runaway convention. That's just simply not true. And the last page of your packet addresses that. Again, these are quotes not from me or Wolf-PAC. It's from the U.S. Department of Justice and from the American Bar Association. So I would just encourage, the people that are in opposition to this bill to take the time to read these reports. They're good. I will read them. If you send me reports, legal reports, that are contradictory to what we're telling people, we will change our stance, but we haven't seen it. And so I think we need to start talking about this in a way where this article legitimizes this Article 5 convention process, because it is in the Constitution. And when Congress is unresponsive, this is what we have. There aren't a whole lot of options. We need to use this option. We need to start talking about these resolutions based on the subject matter. So that's it. I just wanted to address that, and I really hope that Hawaii does lead again on this critical issue. As we heard earlier, Hawaii was the first state to stand up to Congress initially and ask them to propose an amendment on reversing Citizens United. So we need you to be leaders again in this fight for free and fair elections. So thank you.
Thank you. I have a number of other testimonies from people who indicated that they would not be here. So is there anybody else here who would like to testify? Okay, come forward.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm sorry I missed this in my searches for something to testify. But I'm here as a person who has 2 strikes against her according to the original Constitution. Number 1, I'm a woman. No women were consulted, signed on to the Constitution. And
just let us know, you're for or against?
I am against this. Okay. So that's one of the reasons. Number 1, I was a woman. I wasn't even. And number 2, my whole life until the time I married my husband, who's wonderful. But until that time, I was a Martinez. In Southern California, when I grew up in the 60s, it wasn't cool to be Hispanic. In fact, we didn't even have the word in common use of Hispanic. You were a spec, and I'm not going through all those. I've suffered enough. I was told by my high school counselor, we don't have any scholarships for you or grants. But then you and your people just get married and have children. So I didn't end up graduating with my master's, even with my AA or my BA, until I was almost a senior citizen. So my point is, we cannot, everything that we've done since the writing of the Constitution are amendments. Do an amendment. We're having a change in Congress. We cannot judge them on what's going to come. What we have to do is register to vote and vote. So please do not pass this, because I'm living proof that who's to say next time who will be left out of the Constitution. In the meantime, let's just vote and get the right people in there. And it's happened before, and it can happen again. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Ken Farm. I am speaking, unfortunately, against this resolution, and I'll tell you why. First of all, the root word is limited. Can we confirm or deny that it actually will be a limited convention? I hear that word being used a lot, and I know some of the papers that you have, but we need to make sure and confirm that prior to. Other part is, I don't want to take away from the part that we do have problems. There are issues that we have. For example, money in politics is a very huge issue at the federal level and in cases in the state level. For example, banking regulation, trying to defund the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, as well as the EPA and the environmental concerns. Right now, the other side is talking about that they have the support for a constitutional convention, but at the same time, I think that we should look at the support for a constitutional amendment. And if there is support for something like this, then there should be support for a constitutional amendment. Furthermore, all other conventions that were talked about under the guise of before Citizens United and what actions took place before Citizens United. So we need to take that in consideration. What happened prior and the rules concerning those things may not be in effect and may be different and will be different under the guise of Citizens United. We will also make sure also with this that if there is a convention, as mentioned before, it will be a convention with Citizens United and all the influences that comes with it, the Koch brothers, the money that will be injected in it. So we have to make sure that we outweigh the costs, and we have to be sure that what we're doing is correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Michelle Kurihara-Klein on behalf of the Hawaii Government Employees Association. I sincerely apologize. We did submit testimony in opposition, but it was filed late, and so I do apologize. I have a draft copy of it, but I will be sure that it is on the record. I don't want to belabor the hearing any longer than necessary, but I do want to echo that HGA raises the same concerns as the Attorney General, the ACLU, Common Cause, and the League of Women Voters, amongst other forces in opposition to this measure. We respectfully request that you defer this measure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Chairman Taniguchi, Vice Chairman Rhodes, and committee members. My name is Marin Bonet. I'm in support of SCR 76. I live in Senate District 25. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for your tireless service to the people of Hawaii. As a relatively new voter and political volunteer, I now hold an even greater respect for those who participate in the political process and for those who hold office. You allow the rest of us a platform to speak, and you help to shape our lives in the most profound and basic ways. I took half the day off of work to be here today because I'm in strong support of SCR 76, the Free and Fair Elections Resolution, which I believe reinforces the connection between politicians and their constituents. I'm an average person in Hawaii, born and raised on Oahu. My grandparents purchased their family home in Makakilo many years ago, and my husband and I are proud to call Hawaii our home. I only hope we can continue to live here, as many of my friends and colleagues have moved away to find more affordable cities to raise their families. SCR 76 will aid in limiting the influence of money in our electoral process by utilizing our state's rights as intended in Article 5 of the United States Constitution. Hawaii needs to be at the forefront of this tide of moral change and become the 6th state to call for a limited national convention to propose an amendment to the Constitution urging for campaign finance reform and free and fair elections. When I was in elementary school, a kupuna would come to our classroom every so often to teach us Hawaiian words, stories, and folklore. One of the words we learned was pono, to do what is right, moral, and for the well-being of others. This has not escaped my mind after all of these years, and I believe it is our time to bring this Hawaiian value to the country. Mahalo.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Chair, Vice Chair, members, I apologize for submitting late testimony. The Hawaii State AFL-CIO has extreme concern, and we stand in strong opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Senator Noguchi, Senator Rhodes, and the committee. I'm Mike Britton with the Electrical Workers Union, IBW 1260. And for the same reasons that everyone has already spoken, IBW 1260 stands in opposition, but I didn't submit written testimony, but I'd like to tell a quick story illustrating why I personally oppose this. I watched my daughter pressed by a state rep about a constitutional convention. And I watched her face as he made the argument, although knowing he was against a constitutional convention, pressing her why we should have a constitutional convention. And I watched her face change from uncertainty, not really knowing what he was talking about, to conviction that she needed a constitutional convention. And I think while we agree with intent that money needs to get out of politics, specifically big money, the ability to see someone change from one single rep, to watch my daughter, 19 years old, I consider intelligent, smart young woman, and see her change with a simple message. The money that the proponents fear will be at the doorstep of a convention. A well-oiled machine, well-financed, that use terms like pro-life, right to work, have convinced people for 40, 50, 60 years to vote against their own self-interests by messaging. And that messaging is funded by money. Hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. And if you fear the money in politics, you should fear the unintended consequences that that money will bring in a constitutional convention. So while we do believe money needs to be out, again, we ask the committee to defer the resolution.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, my name is Greg Schuster, Chair, Vice Chair, and other committee members. Thank you for holding this hearing. I'm not going to rehash many things that have been said, but I'm originally from Illinois, and I've lived in Hawaii for 9 years, and part of the things that I like about Hawaii and Illinois are very similar places as far as ideals, and I can guarantee you in each state legislatures, the same concerns that they have with Illinois and Hawaii are the same. If they could add amendments such as abortion and other issues at the very end of the process, I don't believe that Illinois or California would have passed this resolution. This is why I strongly support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Aloha again, Chair Taniguchi, Vice Chair Rhodes, and members of the committee. Tim Vandeveer, once again, testifying in support as an individual, not in my capacity as Chair of the Democratic Party, though. I would note, while this resolution is not one of those that was enumerated, also not enumerated in the legislative priorities this year, the Democratic Party of Hawaii platform does state that we support and encourage overturning the Citizens United decision. And our national committee, the DNC platform, has adopted a convention in 2016, specifically says that Democrats support a constitutional amendment to overturn the Supreme Court's decisions in Citizens United and Buckley v. Vallejo. But I won't get into any more of the platform out of interest in time, and I apologize for turning in late testimony. Obviously, this is a matter of constitutional interpretation, and there are many in this room who I consider friends and fellow party members who I disagree with about the constitutional interpretation. I actually testified in opposition to this resolution last year and have been sufficiently persuaded in the interim after reading the legal reports and understanding the jurisprudence and really the intent of the framers, I think, in holding a limited convention just for that constitutional amendment. And I would note that someone noted that there hasn't been a constitutional convention, an Article 5 convention in the past 200 years, but someone else also noted that we've come very, very close. And I think that's really the point of this whole thing. It's not just an effort in holding this convention, but it's also putting pressure on Congress. Nothing has been done. And this is an exercise in organizing. And I believe, after reading the opinion of legal experts and also members of our courts, that this can be limited, and also firmly believe that when the people lead, our leaders will follow, and this will put sufficient pressure on Congress. So with that, I personally ask that you support SCR 76, and I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good morning. Michael Galoyu, LGBT Caucus Chair. We stand in opposition to this resolution because of the things that the Attorney General has brought up to us and the ACLU. We've made so many strides within the LGBTQIA community thanks to the Supreme Court and thanks to our Constitution as it is now. Should there be a constitutional convention, if we don't know for sure that they won't be able to touch anything else, we could lose the gains that we've made. And so until those questions are answered, we do need to stand in opposition. Yes, we do need to get money out of politics, and that is a priority for our party. But there's other ways to get this done, and it's, as we're seeing across this nation, with just in Pennsylvania, Lamb was outspent 10-1. He still won in a district that Trump took by 20 points. In Georgia, we saw a U.S. Senator from the Democratic Party for the first time in 20 years. There is a movement afoot, thanks to little things called the Women's March. The resistance is alive and well, and we are seeing these people are waking up. As we saw this past weekend with March for Our Lives, they're waking up. The people have woken up, and if we take Congress back, we can overturn it through just a constitutional amendment, not a constitutional convention. All right? Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, questions from members? Senator Rhodes? Sure.
Jason Bradshaw. So first, as a way of preface, in an all-Democratic Senate, the American Conservative Union named me and Senator Chang as the most liberal members of an all-Democratic Senate. I have an F rating with the NRA. My grandfather worked for the United Auto Workers for 45 years, so I come at this. I think our objectives are the same. What I'm sensing is a very different balancing of the risks, and I guess I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. So first of all, we haven't had a constitutional, an Article 5 convention for a long time.
Yes.
But why do you think that is?
Because people are concerned by the potential outcome of what a constitutional convention could have.
You don't think it's because when we get close, Congress says, hey, you know what? We don't want that rabble making this decision for us. So why don't we address the issue ourselves?
That's possible.
Okay.
So the other thing to note too is, unfortunately, not everyone is as progressive or liberal as you are, right? And so, and I just want to make that clear.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah.
But say we did get to the, whatever it is, the 2/3 to actually call a convention, and it was, the single issue that the states were calling for was overturning Citizens United. And we went in there and they said, okay, we're going to go rogue. We're going to start dealing with all this other stuff. But doesn't that cut both ways? I mean, I think Mr. Romero said that Scalia was like, we don't want a constitutional convention. We don't know what we're going to get. So if we got to, I forget what the number is now, 2/3 of 50 is 34. If we got to 34 on a Citizens United convention, and we went in there and we started opening things up, why, in the current climate, why wouldn't we open up the Second Amendment? Justice Stevens, former Justice Stevens, came out with an op-ed just recently, I think, saying we should overturn it completely.
I would say that's...
Why isn't the risk just as great for the other side?
It is just as great, but what we're going up against is possibly billions of dollars funded by the Koch brothers. That is a concern, right? And I would say I don't have faith in the electorate. We voted in Donald Trump. That is our climate today, and if we don't know who potentially could be elected as a delegate. If those delegates got selected to the Constitutional Convention, I'd say the Second Amendment remains and it doesn't get removed.
So, okay, so like let's just presume that everything goes bad and we get to the final ratification process, so you need 13 states to block it. Even at the nadir of Democratic Party power in the United States today, we've got more than 13 states would never approve something that had I don't know, whatever it is that we would find objectionable about the. I don't see the risk, and I'm trying to figure out why people who are opposed to it. You don't know what's going to happen in the future, but it's not like the status quo is all that great on this. I mean, the Citizens United has been around for 8 years, and it's not going anywhere. Janice is another horrible decision that's coming down. We might want to raise that at a constitutional convention too. But just the fact. Okay, so I'll try to get a question in here somewhere. Why is your assessment of the risk so different? I guess.
I guess our assessment of the risk is that we just don't know, and the potential negatives that could result from a constitutional convention, and we just don't want to take that chance.
But if we don't take any chances, how do we ever change anything?
We do agree that money out of politics, there should be money out of politics. We agree Citizens United should be overturned, but we just don't believe this is the right path to do it.
So what is the right path to do it?
Well, I don't know. But maybe a Con-Am, but, maybe not through a constitutional convention.
Okay, I'll quit badgering you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
If I can follow up,
Yep.
Chair? Can I
more badgering by
wait, more badgering. I have to say, I came in here today opposing, because I also I have concerns about whether our country at this point can have a constructive discussion. I think it would be a battleground. That said, I have serious opposition about Citizens United. I got elected or ran for office soon after it happened, and I took a pledge to not take any PAC money or lobbyist money, and I've kept that. But I have to agree with Senator Rhodes. Why would you think a constitutional amendment is going to work when right now races for Congress are taking millions and millions of dollars, and they rely completely on these kinds of donations? Even people that you agree with, rely on it. They're not going to change it. So what was getting me very frustrated today is hearing all this opposition from people who actually agree with the Wolf-PAC group about the problems, but I'm not hearing any viable alternatives to change it. And to me, the Koch brothers actually have the upper hand right now because they are able to fund all of these congressional campaigns, and ordinary people can't. So, I'm seeing things like in the era of social media, the rise of Bernie Sanders, the rise of March for Our Lives, and things like that. Don't you think that can help offset?
That is exciting, no doubt, but we just don't simply have the money to compete. Now, fortunately, we do have the means of social media to be able to get our message across. But make no mistake, the Koch brothers have billions of dollars
Well, I understand that,
I think they would easily spend in a constitutional convention to ensure they have the appropriate delegates selected to kind of figure out what path they want to go down.
But don't you think other groups would be able to find other vehicles as well? And I guess, the other thing I'm throwing back at you is not so much arguing for the convention, but then the alternative that you're proposing to the amendment, I don't think that's viable. And what frustrates me is hearing so many people here come in here and argue about, whether we could have it limited or not. None of us are going to make that decision. It doesn't matter what's, ultimately it will be decided, but why not use the collective brain power of the people in here who are trying so hard to oppose this concurrent resolution to come up with alternatives? Because the problem is not fixing itself. So, what can you do aside from opposing this to actually get us onto a path to make some changes?
What can we do?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question.
Thanks, I get paid to ask the good
No,
questions.
but-
But
yes.
no, I'm seriously looking for an answer. Because if all this collective brain power of opposition just dissipates after this, you're not going to get the changes that you want. And you know what you're losing? When you take a look at the maps around the nation and what's coming down and what's going on in the Supreme Court, I'm starting to tilt a little, I guess, in listening to the discussion and want to echo the Senator Rhodes' question is, what's the risk given what's going on now?
I think there's great risk, actually. We want to be able to see Citizens United get overturned, but we're talking about not sure what could happen at a constitutional convention. We don't believe it can be limited to a single topic, and so you possibly open the floodgates to a lot of potential other outcomes that could result from a constitutional convention. So it's not just about Citizens United; it's about everything, right?
But
and I think
good outcomes.
There could be some good outcomes, but there could also be potentially some really negative outcomes as well. And I'm not exactly sure to say today what they could be and what the positive ones could be, but we would be facing an uncertainty moving forward should that happen. So.
I guess I'm not really wild about the certainties that I see us facing going forward right now. So I understand the concerns about the constructive discussion, but I don't see us on a better path.
Any further questions? If not, thank you.